People who know anything about the European Union should instantly realize why that's a terrible idea. All of these so-called free trade agreements, one of the things that they do is set up international tribunals that can overrule state law, that can overrule federal law. So basically we lose our right to govern ourselves. We would be governed by unaccountable international bureaucracies. These have nothing to do with trade. I'm not opposed to free trade. I think free trade is a good thing. But we're not talking about free trade here. We're talking about managed trade, thousands of pages of regulations and international bureaucracy.
We're talking about government. And that's how they set up the EU, was calling it a free trade commonwealth.
That's exactly right. And we have, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The European Union started with the European Free Trade Agreement. So they thought they were going to build a North American Union here. Robert Pastor, the founding father of that idea, he credited the John Birch Society with killing the plan. But as the CFR made clear even recently this year, they still have plans for this big North American super bloc that would basically usurp the sovereignty and the liberties of the people of the United States and Mexico and Canada. But one thing I want to mention about all these treaties, that all sounds like gloom and doom. One thing that needs to become more widely known, treaties are not in and of themselves the supreme law of the land. There's this misconception promoted by the government and by the UN that, the U.S. government signs a treaty, the Senate ratifies it, suddenly whatever it says in that treaty is the law of the land. That's just simply not the case. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, one of the most important founding fathers, he made that absolutely clear in his letters and his writings. Treaties do not supersede the Constitution. They do not grant any new powers to the federal government that weren't granted by the Constitution. And the Supreme Court has agreed with this interpretation as recently as 57 in Reed versus Covert. They said the federal government cannot assume any new powers just by signing a treaty. So, that's really one of the big stumbling blocks here for the globalists. They have to literally distort what the Constitution says to pretend like all these treaties purporting to grant the federal government and the UN all this power are legitimate. They're not legitimate. They're simply not legitimate. Doesn't matter if the Senate ratifies them. The federal government cannot expand its powers with a treaty. The Supreme Court has said so. The Founding Fathers said so. The Constitution says so. And it's very clear. So if we can expose the truth and the facts and the globalists, I see clear skies ahead. We can do a lot of good things, but it's going to require effort from everybody to educate their legislators, educate their congressmen, educate their city council, educate their communities about these facts so that we can avoid the future that these, maniacs is a good way to call them, have planned for us.
Well, you're right. The constitutional scholars are legion on the fact that a treaty does not trump a domestic law. But regardless of that, Obama is saying he will order agencies to follow treaties even if Congress doesn't ratify. Let me ask you this question. What do you make of Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and others refusing to repeal Obamacare, refusing to go after him, refusing to impeach him, refusing to shut down the government, to force him to not have executive amnesty? This really shows us that the globalists are controlling the leadership of both parties. You got a lot of great grassroots people that just came into office. I don't know how they think they're going to get away with this. And having people like Jonathan Gruber traipsing around, admitting it's a way to socially engineer and raise taxes, and then his own party running from him but still defending the legislation. We have to come to grips with the fact that we really are dealing with a group of criminals.
Mm-hmm. And, no doubt the leadership of the GOP is controlled by neocons and globalists, same Council on Foreign Relations that controls the Obama administration and the UN. And that's obvious just by their fruits. By their fruits ye shall know them. We can look very clearly at Congress. They just got a huge Republican majority, and they're relying on the ignorance of the American people and on Republican voters in particular to not understand that they have the complete and total power to stop any of this. All they have to do is refuse to provide funding for it. All funding has to come from the House of Representatives. If the House does not approve funding for Obama's imperial decrees, for the UN climate, they're not even calling it a treaty now because Obama knows he won't get it ratified. But they can deny funds for any of this, and all Obama can do is kick and scream. So they're relying on our ignorance to get away with this kind of stuff. But if we can educate the American people, show them that the House has the power to cut the funding for any of this, the whole charade crumbles. And I hope that a lot of these new grassroots Republicans that got elected, I hope
that's right. Well, that's why Congress keeps playing dumb. Like, we didn't know that Gruber's plan to us was a lie. We didn't know. Well, now they know it's a screw job. They need to repeal it. Let's play this clip of Elijah Cummings savaging Gruber. Cummings is really good at acting like he doesn't know that he supports stuff that basically double black unemployment in Maryland. Here's the clip. And then we'll...
Jonathan Gruber, for stupid, I mean absolutely stupid, comments he made over the past few years, and then drill and grill Administrator Taverner about what appears to be an inadvertent mistake in reporting ACA enrollment numbers. This may be good political theater, but it will not help a single American get health insurance. It will not help a single person get well. It will not help a single person get the care that they need.
Listen how he talks to you like you're 5 years old.
Let me be clear, I'm extremely frustrated with Dr. Gruber's statements.
Your screw job's getting exposed.
They were irresponsible, incredibly disrespectful.
Well, for telling the truth about what you're involved in?
And did not reflect reality, and they were indeed insulting. I was in Congress when this law was debated, and Dr. Gruber does not speak for me or the chairman of the other committees who worked tirelessly.
Or the 12,000 pages of changes that
you debated this legislation for nearly a year.
You debated it, huh?
Before it was finally passed and signed by the president.
Did you read any of it?
We held 79 hearings and markups in the House of Representatives.
Of propaganda and baloney.
Never once did I believe or did anyone suggest that we were somehow hiding our goals from the American people.
Yeah, you don't want our guns either.
But worst of all, Dr. Gruber's statements gave Republicans a public relations gift in their relentless political campaign to tear down the ACA and eliminate health care.
The Republicans helped write it.
Of America.
The Republican leadership.
Many Republicans now allege
you mean good Republicans?
Some kind of Democratic conspiracy
Oh.
citing the praise for Dr. Gruber's work from President Obama and other Democrats. But that, too, is completely wrong. Let me highlight some additional praise Dr. Gruber received for his work. Dr. Gruber received the following thanks for his contributions to health care legislation, and I quote, Jonathan Gruber at MIT devoted hours and hours to an essential economic model.
All right, let's not play any more of these lies. What do you make of this type of arrogance and hubris? Then we're going to skip this network break and go to phone calls.
You know, I think it's symptomatic of everything that's going on in Washington, D.C. It's constant. It's all about deceiving the stupid voters, as Gruber put it. If they couldn't deceive the stupid voters, they couldn't get away with this kind of arrogant crime spree.
Hence Common Core.
It is. It's all across the board. If you look at education, healthcare, all of it relies on deceiving voters who they think are stupid. And, that makes our job very clear. We need to educate the electorate and get these people out of office so that they'll stop destroying our country, stop trampling on our rights, and stop selling us out to organizations like the United Nations that are being used to take our guns and infringe on freedom around the world. It's that simple.
Well, they're just mafias that come in and hijack free economies, cut them up, divide them up, and then have a new scam to fix all the problems they've created before. And Cummings knows full well what he's done. Everybody knows what's in that bill up there in Congress. And see, now they're like, the Republicans want to get rid of what we've got. No, Boehner and McConnell don't. See, because when it all comes out that they're together on it, then they lose the Democrats. The only reason the Democrats are supporting is because they think the Republicans want to take their free goodie away, and they've had an imaginary victory. That's why you checkmate them when you actually bring out its bipartisan screw job. Jim in Missouri, thanks for holding. You're on the air worldwide.